Yes, it will make your ranges worse. Whoa, and I survived that. Alright, so hello gamers, and welcome back to another video. There are a bunch of barrel attachments in this game now, and a bunch of suppressors as well, so I thought I would make an entire ranking video of all of them to explain which each one does and which ones are good. I'll talk about all the different long barrel types, all the different suppressors, muzzle brakes, compensators, stuff like that, so check down below if you're subscribed because it really helps a lot. But yeah, let's get into it. So I wanted to start it off with the long and short barrels. There's a bunch of these, and they're all pretty interesting. So first we have the assault rifle, carbine, and the TCR one, which is the carbine or squad barrel. Now the carbine barrel is our first one, and this one is actually really interesting, and it has a really good niche, but basically it'll give you better walk speed, better aim speed, and swap speed, kind of like a remove stock, but not quite as crazy as that. And best of all, it will give you a better headshot multiplier. In this case, it increases it to 1.73, but this gun already had a pretty crazy headshot multi, so that's not really going to happen every single time or anything. So you'll do increased headshot damage. However, there's a couple of pretty big downsides. Firstly, unlike most barrel attachments, it doesn't really have a massive effect on recoil, which is annoying. Most barrel attachments will reduce your recoil in some way or another, and it will make your min damage range worse, your velocity worse, and your pen worse, so you won't do as well over range. You won't lose any range to damage, which is pretty nice, so you basically will do the same damage at longer ranges. However, your damage will drop faster, so you won't have great damage as far as you would normally. The increased headshot damage is nice, and that's really the big thing here. If you're willing to lose some pen, some velocity, and stuff like that, then check it out. It can give you a 2-shot headshot on certain guns. Then we have the squad barrel. Now, the squad barrel is crazy. It will reduce your recoil. It will make both your max and min damage range better. It will make your velocity better, and it will make your bullet penetration better, which is kind of interesting. So lots of really good stuff. It will make your handling, your aiming speed, your swap speed, your walk speed, everything like that. It'll make that worse, which is pretty annoying, but like it's got some pretty big upsides. And I'm gonna be real, if you have a squad barrel, not necessarily any long barrel, but the assault rifle carbine squad barrel on your gun, I recommend you use it. Maybe even pre-buy it, because like it's a great attachment. Your bullets will have better drop. You'll do more damage over range. You do the same amount of damage to the head and everything. So it's not like directly the opposite of the carbine barrel, but it is in most ways. Handling and stuff is kind of annoying, but I'm gonna be real. Like, this is just kind of a direct upgrade. It doesn't have a massive effect on ranges, but the other stuff, plus a little bit of extra range, is really good. So yeah, carbine barrel is going to be getting a 7 out of 10. I don't think it's great, but it does have some times where it's pretty good. Squad barrel is a 10 out of 10. Like, there's really no guns that I wouldn't recommend it on. Sometimes you'll want like a compensator if you want a little bit extra recoil control, but most of the time, just use it. It's great. Now, next up, we have the PDW and pistol long barrel, and this one is weird. It's got its own niche, kind of, but I'm gonna be real, it is the weakest of the long barrels by far. In fact, a lot of people, sometimes including me, will say that they ruined the long barrels on these guns, but yeah. First off, we have the short barrel, and the short barrel in this case will reduce your pen, it will reduce your velocity, it will reduce both your max and min range, unlike the assault rifle one. And you'd expect, well, you get more headshot damage, right? You don't even get better headshot damage. It does have the advantages of faster walk speed, which is cool and all, but you don't get an increased headshot multi, which is weird. And you get worse max and min range, so it's basically like the carbine barrel, but like way worse. I don't get it. But yeah, I don't really recommend this one. This one's like a 6 out of 10. It's nice for the walk speed and stuff, but I wouldn't really recommend it in most cases, especially because PDWs have pretty bad velocity, and you're gonna go down to 1,000 velocity here, which is pretty bad velocity, and I just don't really recommend it on pretty much any PDW. But next up, we have the long barrel. Now, the long barrel, in this case, will not increase your max damage range, but will increase your min range by a massive amount. I think it's like 60% or something stupid. However, here's the weird part about it. It will reduce your damage. Yes, you heard me right. It will reduce your damage. How much will it reduce it by? Well, it really depends. It will always reduce it by 1 shot to kill. For example, on 45 ACP, it will reduce it from 50 to 49. So that will make it a 3-shot instead of a 2-shot. But then we have the default ammo, which will be reduced from 36 down to 32. So by 4 damage. Getting extra min range is cool and all, but like, at disadvantage with the shots to kill of your gun is just absolutely atrocious. It's cool on some guns, like for example, the MP5 SD, the MP5, their 3-hit kill range is not worth it basically at all, because they have a pretty trash 3-hit kill range. So if you want better velocity and pen and ranges and damage over range, that's cool and all, but like, you still lose your 3-hit kill, which is pretty crazy. Even those, it's not really that great. So this is gonna get like a 7 out of 10. It's not good. It's fine, but when you compare it to something like Squad Barrel, it's really not something you should go out of your way to use. And we have the Marksman Barrel and the Assault Barrel. The Assault Barrel basically will remove all your special multis on a DMR, essentially reducing the damage by quite a bit. It will also lower your ranges, your velocity, your pen. However, it will give you something pretty interesting, which is it will actually increase your rate of fire. This is not too bad on the Mark 11 because even without increased torso damage, it's still gonna 3-shot anywhere to the body at any range, which is nice, but like you don't get as great damage. You also can't 2-shot in close range with it, but you do fire faster, which is nice. I don't find this to be like the best of the long or short barrels. I think it's an alright and interesting attachment with something cool about it. Please take, no, we lose the flag. You only get like 60 RPM with this, which is kind of annoying. You could use like muzzle booster and have kind of similar. Assault Barrel gets like a 7 out of 10. It has a use, but it's not really that great. But then we have the Marksman Barrel. Now the Marksman Barrel is on the SL8, and this will give you better ranges, better velocity, better pen, and it will give you better multipliers. So you have a better torso multi by a lot and a better headshot multi by a lot as well. You will shoot quite a bit slower with this. However, this is so worth it on the SL8. It makes the SL8 like an absolute powerhouse. The velocity becomes way better, and yeah, you lose some RPM, but like if you're hitting your heads, your torso shots, this thing actually becomes really good. You gotta keep in mind, you have like 300 RPM, but you have 30 rounds, so you can shoot for absolute years with this. And if you're getting the actual full RPM, which I don't really use this a ton, so I don't really have myself completely trained to shoot this at the full RPM, but if you have it, then it's great. Like this gun can actually do some real damage and doesn't feel absolutely atrocious in terms of damage like it usually does, because I know this gun is not really a hugely popular gun. I kind of like it. I don't usually use it because I don't really want to get carpal tunnel syndrome. Clicky gun's not fun for me usually, but when it becomes more of a tappy gun and not a spammy gun, then it's actually more fun for me, and this is more of a tappy gun because you know, you can't shoot it too fast, but if you're hitting your shots, it's really good. Yeah, Marksman Barrel is like a 10 out of 10. I think it's amazing, very powerful. It really does require being a marksman. You kind of got to hit your headshots and torso shots, make it worth using. Otherwise, you may as well just use the default ammo and spam more. This gun becomes a lot better. Maybe the best DMR in the entire game, but hey, that's just my opinion. Really, really fun long-range gun, though. Now, finally, we have the Heavy and Light Barrel. Now, this is on a couple of pistols as well as the sniper rifles. The Heavy Barrel will reduce your max damage range, but increase your min damage range, your velocity, and your pen. It will also have, you know, your generic long barrel, making you slower downsides, and basically, if you want to preserve your damage at range better, usually have a slightly better torso kill range as well. However, have slower handling and stuff. I'm gonna be real, this is a great attachment. Velocity increase is substantial a lot of the time, so that's pretty nice. On the BFG, I think it increases it by like 600 velocity. You go from 3000 to 3600, which is really good. And yeah, this is a 9 out of 10 because it has some downsides. Sometimes it doesn't really increase your torso kill by that much. On the Remington, it increases by like a tiny amount. The other upsides are worth it for me. I like the velocity and stuff, but if you don't really like having that slower handling and stuff, it does have more downsides. Since it reduces your max damage range, it's annoying to use on stuff like the TRG because sometimes it will make your limb kill range worse, but it's still an overall really good attachment. Really worth using a lot of the time. Great for being more accurate and stuff. Yeah, 9 out of 10. I'm going 17 and 3, and I think 2 of those were like me resetting, so I'm kind of popping off. But next up, we have the Light Barrel. Now, the Light Barrel is more or less the opposite of the Heavy Barrel. It will not change your min damage range. However, it will increase your max damage range. So basically, you do have a better torso kill range, as well as faster handling, faster walk speed by quite a bit. Like, that's actually really good. You do have some massive drawbacks, like substantially lower velocity and quite a bit less pen, which is kind of annoying. And your torso kill range isn't like infinite or anything. It does have the faster handling and stuff, which is pretty nice on a sniper rifle. Like, a lot of people will prefer that on a sniper rifle to just straight up having a better one-shot range, and it does have an effect on your one-shot range as well. It'll give you about like, you know, 10 15, maybe more studs of torso kill range. The Light Barrel is going to be getting an 8 out of 10. I think it's definitely the best of the short barrels. However, it's not necessarily going to be the greatest when compared to something like the Heavy Barrel. Next up, we have the integrated suppressors, and these are on stuff like the DT11 Pro and the Type 20. In this case, you'll get better ranges, but you'll have worse velocity and worse damage. I give that one probably an 8 out of 10 because Squad Barrel is kind of better. And the suppressor on the DT11 is really not that great because it reduces your velocity by a lot. The suppressor on the DT11 used to be actually was still pretty trash because it used to basically just make your spread worse. Now it doesn't necessarily do that, but like your velocity will be worse. So I think that you'll have probably overall worse times hitting your shots. The thing about suppressors is that they used to reduce your damage by quite a bit. Now they don't do that. So this went from being a decent option for a suppressor to being a pretty trash suppressor. Now the suppressors don't reduce damage or velocity. So if you had something like, you know, a default suppressor on this gun, it would actually be a lot better than the integrated suppressor, but it's a very quiet suppressor, which is cool. That's a good play right there. So is it the best attachment of all time? No, I'd give this one like a 6 out of 10. It's really nothing to be super happy about. I would use like a full choke, maybe something like a short barrel over it, but it really depends on what you want. But yeah, it's really not too bad. I guess it's quiet, but like the reason I don't like it is because you could use like literally every other shotgun with a suppressor and be better than this particular one with an integrated suppressor. But for the gun it's on, I guess it's good because it doesn't have any other suppressors and it's not really going to be that big of a problem because it doesn't just straight up make your spread worse anymore, I don't think. So it's better than it used to be, but yeah, it's not really the best or anything. The DT11 is an overall good gun though, so maybe just stick to, you know, your full choke, perhaps a short barrel or just really no barrel attachment would be fine. But maybe don't go for a suppressor. Maybe use a different... Wow, okay. I'm just cracked with this gun though. Dude, the DT11 just makes me go like insano mode. I'm so good with this gun for some reason. What the heck? Now we're going to move on to the majority barrels that are on basically every gun in the entire game. And I'll use these on a few different guns. We'll start it off with the muzzles. And first off, we have the flash hider. Now the flash hider is an interesting attachment because it's actually not too bad now. It will change your firing pitch a little bit, which is interesting. It will lower your overall recoil by about 5%, which is not really too bad. In fact, if you don't have any other barrels on your gun and you don't want to use like a suppressor on it, this is actually a really good early game option until you get like a comp or a muzzle brake. And also it has the advantage of hiding your muzzle flash. So if you don't like muzzle flash, check out the flash hider. It's really not too bad. It will make your hip fire accuracy worse, but it's really not that big of a problem or anything. And it used to be just like objectively one of the worst attachments ever. It's great that it's actually not too bad now. I'd give this one honestly like an 8 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10 for reducing or removing your muzzle flash, because I guess you could just use the suppressor, but if you want to have an unsuppressed gun, have better camera recoil, have the same ranges, and also hide your muzzle flash, then it's really good for all that specific purpose. So next up we have the compensator. Now the compensator, you probably have heard about this attachment before, but you probably don't know the exact specifics. Basically, this will reduce your horizontal recoil by around 40%, but will increase your vertical recoil by a little bit. So basically, it makes your gun very accurate. If you have a gun that has any horizontal recoil at all, like you go side to side at all, use the compensator. And that's basically every gun in this entire game. You could go more specific with some of the other barrel attachments I'll talk about later in the video, but really, you can use the compensator on everything if you wanted to. Every auto gun in the entire game, even guns that are pretty good with the muzzle brake as well, are still really great with the compensator. It's definitely just the best barrel attachment overall. It just makes your recoil more accurate. It's really hard to argue with this attachment. It's just so good at what it does, which is just, it makes your recoil a lot better. So I'm going to be giving this one definitely a 10 out of 10. It's great, and it's really the barrel you should be using on like everything. I'm not gonna lie, like you should be using this on every gun that you own. So next up we have the muzzle brake, and the game is about to end. Oh no. So basically the muzzle brake does the opposite. It will make your vertical recoil lower, but your horizontal recoil worse, which, as you can see from this gun, is really not that great. I'll quickly explain why I don't think this is a great attachment. It's very good, but it's not the best attachment in my opinion. That's because players, you know, they're not wide, they are tall. So having more vertical recoil isn't necessarily that big of a problem if the spray pattern is more accurate and you're going to land more shots. And if you have a gun that already has super low recoil, it's really not too bad to use it, but because it will make your horizontal recoil worse, it's generally not really a great attachment. A lot of people use it, but I'm just going to tell you right now, use the compensator over it, and the compensator is even less kills. So yeah, I'll give the muzzle brake an 8 out of 10. I think it's a very good attachment, definitely worth checking out, but not the best. But then next up we have the T-brake attachment. Now the T-brake attachment is kind of like a flash hider plus. Instead of reducing your overall recoil by 5%, it reduces it by about 10%. It's only reducing camera recoil, by the way, which is actual recoil. It will affect your spray pattern, but this gun isn't necessarily just camera recoil. But as you can see, compensator was more up and down. Muzzle brake was kind of like a line like this, and this is kind of just a blob, which is really not that bad. A blob is going to still be accurate and hit players. And if you can't decide between the muzzle brake or the compensator, then use the T-brake, because it also really doesn't have a lot of downsides, unlike the flash hider, which has minor downsides and doesn't reduce recoil by quite as much as this does. This reduces your camera recoil by 10% instead of 5% in both vertical and horizontal varieties. So yeah, I definitely do prefer the compensator on most of my guns. And if you're bad at making setups, just put like a stubby, a folding, and a T-brake. Probably just a stubby, to be honest. Frick, that's a grenade. But then we have the X-ring attachment. Now the X-ring attachment will increase your rotational and displacement recoil. This one is a little bit more weird, and yeah, as you can see, it's really not that effective. You're getting more horizontal recoil, not getting as much just overall reduction. That's because this gun is the G36. It doesn't really have the most rotational and displacement recoil. I'm gonna be real, you don't really need to worry about this one too much, because there's a few guns that it's very good on, but most guns you really shouldn't be using it on. And also, you gotta keep in mind that like the compensator is good on everything. So even if the X-ring could slightly be better in some ways, you don't really need to be using the X-ring when the compensator just exists. This is a 7 out of 10 attachment. It's good on some guns, but it's just not generally overall a great attachment. But then next up, we have the Halbig device. Now the Halbig device affects recoil in a weird way. It reverses it, and that's kind of interesting. It will kind of, in a few cases, make your spray pattern a little bit tighter, I guess, but the thing is, it will reverse your recoil. Now, this will have some pretty drastic effects on your sights as well. Like, as you can see, my sight is kind of not shooting exactly where the bullets seem to be going. And it can be super annoying to use this attachment, but it's not too bad. It's fine on some guns, but I'm going to be real, compensator is kind of better. Some people do like this because of the reversal of the recoil. I'm going to be real, it's actually going to be getting a 7 out of 10 for me. I think it's actually not as bad as it used to be. It's gotten a bit of a rework lately. But then next up, we have the Loudener. Now the Loudener has a very weird thing where it will actually reduce your recoil similar to a T-brake, and it will make your gun louder by quite a bit. However, it will make your muzzle velocity worse, which is weird and kind of annoying, as well as making, as you can see, your muzzle flash. Do you see the muzzle flash on this gun? It's massive. That's the big problem with this, is the muzzle flash. And the fact that the recoil reduction is not really enough to be warranting the massive muzzle flash and reduced velocity. The main thing about this is, of course, that it makes your gun sound cool in a lot of cases and louder, and that's cool and all, but to be real, this is like a 6 out of 10. It's cool, but it's not really that great. Next up, we have the muzzle booster attachment. This attachment will increase your RPM by 8%. And in this case, it increases it by about 60. However, it will make your recoil a lot worse. Not 8% worse, way worse than like 8%. It's probably more like, you know, 30%. Now that increase in recoil is kind of annoying, and the time to kill only being like, you know, 8% faster. Not really that great, considering the accuracy is that much worse. And the fact that you can't have another different barrel attachment, such as, you know, a long barrel, it won't make your like velocity and stuff worse. And if your gun shoots a little bit too slow, or it has very good accuracy, or it's both of those things, then definitely check out the muzzle booster. But I don't think it's necessarily the greatest. I used to use it more, but I really don't use it on a lot of my guns anymore, because, you know, there's a lot of guns in this game. If you want a gun that fires faster, that gun probably exists, you know what I'm saying? Very good attachment though. I'm gonna give it a 8 out of 10. I don't think it's necessarily the best on everything, but it's pretty good. But next up, we have the regular suppressor. This has essentially no downsides. It will reduce your suppression, I guess, but that's about it. And your aiming walk speed, so you'll walk slower when you aim by like 4%, so it really doesn't matter. Plus, who like walks around like this at all times, so you don't do that. You know, you aim when you're gonna shoot, so it doesn't really matter. But this will make your gun very quiet, and it will reduce your rotational recoil by about 10%. It's not really that great on most guns. It's basically like an X-ring, so you kind of may as well use this over the X-ring. The X-ring does have some better recoil benefits in some cases, but this is also a suppressor, and yes, it does not reduce your velocity, your ranges, your penetration, nothing like that. It just makes your gun quiet, and that's about it. Yeah, the only downsides really on this one are that you can't really run, you know, a different barrel attachment. But I'm gonna be real, especially early on, since this is like 2 kills to unlock, you should be using this attachment. It is so good. Use it on a sniper rifle because it doesn't reduce your velocity or your pen or anything. It's good on basically every gun in the game. The problem is it's not that great on most guns, and you may as well go for, you know, the downsides of a compensator because they're not that big. But I'll give this this one an 8 out of 10 because there's not a lot of downsides, and the upsides are that you're suppressed, which is really cool, and you get a little bit less recoil. I'll talk about the other suppressors really quickly, but most of them aren't that great. The R2 suppressor is kind of like the regular suppressor with similar recoil control benefits. It'll change some of your camera recoil, but not in a crazy way or anything, and it will reduce your min damage range, which is kind of cringe, but it's kind of like a heavier suppressor than the default suppressor. The PBS1 suppressor and the PBS4 suppressor are kind of similar in what they do. The PBS1 is pretty light and the PBS4 is super heavy. I'm gonna be real, all these ones are like a 7 out of 10. They're not too bad. They reduce, you know, camera rotational kick in some cases, but I'm gonna be real, the only ones you should be using are the suppressor and the ARS. That's why I skipped over the ARS. Now the ARS suppressor has a 35 stud detection radius, which is really good. It will reduce your min damage range by more than any other suppressor in the game, except for I think the oil filter. No, it's the same as the oil filter. It won't reduce your max damage range, which is nice, or your velocity, or your penetration. Yes, it will make your ranges worse. Whoa, and I survived that. But it will reduce your camera recoil overall by 10%. That's what the T-brake does. And you're like, okay, just use the T-brake. But it's also a suppressor, and it's also a very heavy suppressor, and it's very quiet. So if you want what is essentially a T-brake with the advantages of a pretty heavy suppressor with a tiny bit of downsides, but really not too bad considering like min damage range is not as important as max damage range in most cases. Kind of annoying on the G36, but it's not like a ton of min damage range, and I can put up with it because this attachment like basically changed my life, man. Like I got a 135 kill game with the Scar L with this. It's an amazing attachment because the recoil benefits are noticeable and nice, and you get a suppressor built in with that, and you don't lose any damage. It's great. This kind of blows every other suppressor in the game out of the water. It's a 10 out of 10. The default suppressor has a less downsides, but far less upsides, which makes it not really the world's best suppressor or anything like that. I'm not saying it's a bad suppressor. In fact, I gave it like a 9 out of 10, but this is a 10 out of 10 because it's got a tiny bit more downsides, but the upsides are well worth it. It's great on anything, you know, like a rotational recoil gun doesn't matter. Every gun's got camera recoil in this game, so having 10% reduced camera recoil is kind of just 10% reduced recoil, and it's a noticeable difference, and you're just suppressed. Like nobody knows you're there when you're suppressed, man. Next up though, we'll talk about the muffler and the oil filter. Then we'll also talk about the Osprey suppressor in a second. Now the muffler is weird. It will reduce your velocity by 10%, and it will also reduce your fire rate by 10%. It will reduce your recoil by quite a bit, probably like 15, maybe 20% overall, which is nice. However, your gun will fire slower, and also you could just use a compensator. It's funny because the muffler went from being the only suppressor in the entire game that didn't reduce your velocity down to being one of like 3 that does reduce your velocity, which is pretty annoying. And it also does reduce your RPM, which is a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you want from your gun. If you want a gun that's less mag dumpy, that's cool, but if you want, you know, to keep things like, you know, better time to kill, better bullet drop, I don't really recommend that, but it's actually not too bad as well. I'd give it probably a 7 out of 10. All the barrel attachments in this game are pretty good now. I wouldn't say this is like the best of all of them, but I don't think it's necessarily the worst or anything either. Kind of on par with a regular suppressor. It has its niche. If you want a gun that shoots slower, it does have some advantages for that because the lower recoil is noticeable, but it's really not the best recoil of all time, and the fact that you're losing so much RPM is kind of annoying. But yeah, it's really not too bad. But then we have the oil filter. Now the oil filter is like the muffler plus. It'll make your gun very quiet and have a good suppression radius of 5 studs. Basically, you're completely silent. However, you will shoot even slower, and you'll have worse damage ranges and still have 10% reduced velocity, but it also does reduce your recoil by a decent amount. I'm gonna be real, this is a usually meme attachment, but it's really not too bad either. I'd give it probably a 6 out of 10 though, because the reduction in both max and min damage range by quite a bit is annoying. Your gun shoots super slow. It's also just a massive attachment, as you can see. It kind of clips into a lot of the sights in the game, which is annoying. It's a very huge barrel. It will make your handling a lot worse as well. But if you want a slow gun that has a very quiet fire sound, you know, it's there for you, you know. I'd still give it a 6 out of 10 because it's definitely worse than the muffler, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, and I think objectively, this is like quieter and all, but it's, in my opinion, it's not worth it. But last up for these general suppressors, and then we'll talk about a couple of very specialty suppressors. We have the Osprey suppressor, which happens to be on only a couple of guns. It is on 45 ACP and 9mm PDWs. That's it. But it's kind of crazy. Basically, it will give you a better min damage range and better hip fire and a little bit better kind of overall recoil, as well as being a very heavy suppressor. And it sounds kind of interesting. Not crazy advantages to your recoil, but your hip fire will be pretty good, and you'll have a better min damage range. range, which is pretty nice, especially considering the fact that the long barrel on PDWs is, as I talked about earlier on in this video, kind of trash now. So if you want kind of a long barrel, but also a suppressor with less annoying downsides than just your average PDW long barrel, then this barrel is kind of for you, man. I really think this is a great attachment on stuff like the AUG A3 Para that's already super accurate. UMP45 is also good with it. Not quite as great because the UMP45 has a tiny bit of recoil. It's pretty accurate though. But yeah, this is a 10 out of 10. I think it's honestly on par, if not better than the ARS suppressor on the guns that it's on, which is not really too many, which is annoying. But then we have a couple of specialty suppressors, and I'll try to remember all of these, but I really can't. I'll talk about the really good ones that I do remember. First off, the Psionic suppressor, which is kind of a long barrel. It will reduce your max damage range, but increase your min damage range. And also, you know, quiet, but it doesn't really have huge effects on your recoil. You kinda could just be using a default suppressor, maybe an ARS, but you know, the ranges on the MAC-10 are abysmally bad, so maybe don't affect them even more with an ARS suppressor. Then you're gonna have like a 50 stud min range. The Psionic suppressor is very quiet, and it doesn't really have a huge downside for like your velocity and stuff, and it sounds very cool. I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Psionic suppressor. I'm not a huge fan of the MAC-10. This attachment though, it kind of makes it more of a bearable gun to use for me. Also, we have remove suppressor on the Honey Badger. Don't ever use this. Actually, no, it has the advantages of a carbine barrel. Go watch the carbine barrel section in this video if you want to know what it does. The SR3M Vickr suppressor. This is an attachment that actually became really good. It will reduce your velocity, but increase your damage ranges by a lot. It will increase your max range by 20 and your min range by 15, which means you go from a 40 stud 3-hit kill range to a 60 stud 3-hit kill range, and you have a better 5-hit kill range on your SR3M as well. And the downsides are, I guess, you have worse recoil because you can't run a compensator, and the SR3M recoil is kind of not that great, and you do have lower velocity as well. This is a 0 kill unlock attachment, so yeah, use it. Like, I'm gonna be real, this is a 10 out of 10. Like, the 3-hit kill range is great, and it really just makes it essentially the old AS Val with kind of worse recoil and stuff. But if you want to go back to that 900 RPM AS Val from the good old days, this is very reminiscent of that. It even has, I think, a better 3-hit kill range than that old AS Val did. Sure, it doesn't have anywhere near as good recoil. It has worse min damage and worse min hits to kill and stuff, but whoa, I am insane. Okay, this is a good attachment. Frick. Got him. I really should be using the SR3M more with this because it genuinely makes it a fun gun again. Yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 attachment. You could run a comp, it would be just as good. But maybe not, actually. I was resetting like half of those times, and I went 48 and 12. That's pretty good, man. Oh yeah, shotgun long barrels. I forgot about that. The DT11 Pro, it has the combat barrel. That's like a 3 out of 10. You may as well not use it because then you have the cut down barrel. You will reload slightly faster on the combat barrel and have better walk speed and better aiming speed and stuff, but then you can use the cut down barrel, which is probably a 9 out of 10. And sure, you have worse spread and stuff, but like, you know, you get this reload time, it's worth it. This is easily one of the most fun attachments ever added to this video game. It makes your walk speed extremely fast, and it will make you reload really fast as well. Now I'm in Metro, which I'm not a huge fan of Metro because funny. Oh, okay. Okay, I missed that shot. My bad. You get a faster reload, but you get worse spread and stuff. I'd give it a 9 out of 10, definitely, because it's extremely good, but not necessarily objectively better. If you get a little bit of a break between firing your 2 shots, then you can just keep fighting people. I didn't get enough of a break there, though. Also forgot chokes kind of count. Okay, I'll talk about the chokes really quick. The duckbill choke and the paradox choke and the diverter, those are all really not that great. Diverter and duckbill basically give you the weirdest spread you've ever seen. As you can see, it makes your spread like that. Instead of being kind of like a cone, it's kind of more like a line. Not really that great. 5 out of 10, I'm not gonna lie. Paradox choke will give you worse spread but better velocity and ranges. Not necessary to use that either. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. It's slightly better. Modified choke and improved choke are cool and all, but like, I'd give them probably like 7 out of 10s because full choke, that's the one to use. Improved choke, modified choke, and full choke. As you go up the list, they have worse and worse velocity and damage, but they will reduce your spread by more and more. As you can see from this one, your spread becomes pretty accurate. The damage isn't that great though, so kind of iffy on if you should be using it or not, but like, you have a good one-hit kill range if you can hit an effective shot. Like, if you can hit a good portion of your pellets, if you're using a full choke, you win. But sometimes you won't one-shot because it takes more pellets to get a kill, if you understand what that means. Like, since the spread is tighter, you have to make sure to make a really nice connection with your enemy because you have to hit more of your pellets in order to get a kill. But your spread is better, so overall it's probably better to be using this, and I'd give the full choke a 9 out of 10 as well. And the other chokes are like a 7 out of 10 because why would you use them when you could just, you know, go all the way and use a full choke, you know what I'm saying? What are you doing? Then we have the shotgun long and short barrels. These are called the cut down and sporting barrel, but I'm gonna be real, they're kind of more or less your average original long and short barrels, where basically the long barrel gives you better velocity and a better min damage range, but a worse max damage range. And this one gives you a better max damage range, but a worse min damage range and worse velocity. Although they don't seem to have an effect on choke, which seems unlikely. That is not the normal spread of the Saiga. Like, it's bad spread. Like, the Saiga doesn't have that great spread. It's way better. It's like the same spot, and as you can see, it's way better. You could use the long barrel on a shotgun. They said they were gonna make it not have an effect, but I think velocity still does make your spread better, because if your pellets move faster, won't they have like more of a direct trajectory? They're gonna have like less time to spread out, move down, and stuff like that. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not like a super huge knowledgeable person about guns overall. I just know about Phantom Forces guns. In game sense, I think that higher velocity would mean better spread, but that's what it did before, but who knows? I guess the Obraz has its own long barrel, which will reduce your max range, increase your min range, increase your cannon velocity. It's basically just a regular long barrel and a sniper though. But yeah, gamers, if you guys did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe. This video is going to take me forever to edit, so please subscribe if you're new. I've been recording this video for over an hour, so yeah, I really hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found something very interesting about it. Hope you found a new barrel attachment you want to use or something like that. Wow, I really like this. I should be using the SR3M more, man. But yeah, gamers, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace. Have a nice day.